It's the Wednesday Wisdom Show, and you need to know, what is the emerging destiny of media? I talk a lot, almost all the time, about the interrelatedness and interdependence of all humans on all other humans, of us on the system, of how nature works in that way, and how that is really a key to understanding what we are and where we're supposed to be going, that there actually is a direction in life, and it's based on the way that things are built. The fact that we don't really perceive the way that they're built, that's also done in order to help us develop correctly, independently. So I talk about these things a lot, and I often get the question or the comment, give an example. You know, this is such a large picture that it's really difficult to define what is some practical way of working with that formula of the holistic system, that ultimate general law of reality, which is love your friend as yourself. What practical way is there? Because most of the time we just think of that as a nice ideal, but we don't know how to trust, we don't know how to act, we don't know how to measure actions like that. We don't see it coming back at us even if we do it, etc., etc. Mostly it's because the thing that we need to relate with is not about an individual doing this in some kind of a general unformed context. There are specific rules. There are ways in which all of this has been built. And the whole trip of being here is to try to perceive how it's built and to use the laws by which it was built for good. Now, I want to share with you a practical example of what love your friend as yourself is, how it's possible for us to work with this natural interdependency that we have. And I would like to talk about the media. My work is as an artist. I'm a composer and I'm also a producer of media. Amongst other things, I'm also a teacher of Kabbalah. And the reason I'm a teacher of Kabbalah is because Kabbalah is about laws of creativity, the deepest laws of creativity. And it helps a person understand the nature, the actual deepest nature of the problems that we encounter in life. And it also teaches us to work with them in order to create beauty. So I want to share with you something that a group of media creators, me included, put together a couple of years ago, once we started seeing what was happening with the internet. The positive and the negative qualities of the internet and the kinds of things that are showing up there. That it's a force of democratization. I don't mean like governmental democracy, but it gives access to everybody, to everything, in a sense without any special cost, and it requires of us an ethical response. Because if our response is not ethical, then this power of connection to everybody instantaneously turns from a beautiful, fascinating, and entertaining, exciting playground of reality to an instantaneous destruction. You know, it's almost like nuclear fission in the sense that it just trips one thing off in the wrong direction and all the dominoes fall in a negative way. And yet we've been given this thing. So we must be equal to it in some way, equal to the challenge. First thing we need to do is to actually understand what this gift is that we have been presented with. The internet is a model of our complete interrelatedness, and it lays bare for us the level of responsibility that's required of us. Now, no individual is really capable of being responsible totally to something that actually is a worldwide, a planet-wide, total human reality instrument. We have to understand the laws that are being presented in this if we're going to understand it. So what I have here in my hand here is a manifesto that was put together by a group of media creators in order to grasp and express the deeper principle of the internet and how to use it correctly. Basically, why we were given it and what to do with it in order for it to succeed. And not be the kind of place where lies, falsehoods of every kind and destructive impulses of individuals can run rampant across the entire system and hurt everything all at once. No, this is a manifesto talking about how to understand the underlying law that is being exemplified to us by this gift and how to use it to move to our next stage. So you know what manifestos are like. They make very bold statements as statements of truth because it helps cut through the crap and it shows the most important things to consider, to agree with or disagree with, but at least it just lays it out there plain for everybody to see. So who did this? A group of media creators who share the common perception that media is the materialization of thoughts, desires, and intentions, and they've realized that global media brings with it a new set of creative laws. And when we apply them to our own creative process and to our work, we'll be able to direct this enormous potential that will change and reshape our very reality. Yeah, no small stakes. And this manifesto is called Living Manifesto, a Statement of Principles for the Emerging Destiny of Media. I'll just read this to you first, and then I'll go back and look into it a bit. We, the first generation to be granted both the opportunity and the means to end human suffering, realize, 1, that we, the human species, are completely and naturally dependent on each other. 2, that ignorance and resistance to this interconnection and interdependence are the cause of human suffering in all its forms. 3, that we are charged with transforming our attitude towards this connection to one of wholehearted agreement. 4, that this individual transformation is only possible through the influence of a society and culture that inspires and unites its individuals around this very goal. 5, the goal of this culture will be aided by nature, as it is in exact alignment with the natural tendency of the living system which develops its unified parts to fulfillment. 6, this relationship between the individual and the collective will be adjusted in this global world by realizing with the following maxims. 1, in the emerging interconnected reality, media has been revealed to be the only global society. 2, by its nature, global media expresses the desire for connection as its primary value. Any other value expressed through it will fail to touch and inform at best, and at worst will delay humanity's development, deepening its suffering. 3, therefore, we aim to create a new culture expressed through global media and rooted in its primary value, which will provide the necessary, consistent inspiration and motivation to expand our perception and our identification of self and self-interest with the whole. And this is its mission statement. We wish to emulate the natural tendency of the living system, which is focused on unifying its parts for the stated purpose of achieving harmonious similarity with it by creating a global society built solely on the expressions in their media. Okay, so now I want to go back through all of these bold statements and shed a little light on them so that you can agree or disagree. We, the first generation to be granted the opportunity and the means to end human suffering, realize we're put in a position by having been given this gift of understanding, seeing before our eyes as a real thing, a system that actually interrelates everybody almost without any delay at all. It's almost like we're living on the quantum side of reality. That means that we have both the opportunity and the means. It's not just that this interconnectedness, as expressed through the internet, is an interesting novelty, some kind of truth that is interesting to know, but has no practical direct application and is not requiring anything from us. It's not that at all. The fact that we see this clearly, and everybody does see this, I don't really need to explain it to you, means that we're charged with a responsibility here. So we have the insight and we have the tool, an example, actually, of what interconnectedness is as a reality and what the effects, both positive and negative, are according to our behavior. Maybe we haven't discerned clearly what type of actions we should be taking, what constitutes ethics in that regard, morality when it comes to complete interconnectedness. But in fact, all of our traditions of morality, whether you see it in the Bible or whether you see it in terms of the stated ethics, say in terms of the press, in terms of reporting, and it doesn't matter what it is, but that specifically in media, we know that there's an enormous erosion in the press itself. What is being eroded? The ethic. What is the primary ethic? Number one, that we, the human species, are completely and naturally dependent on each other. Everything that is called good in human society, unless it's some made-up unnatural thing that was added by sort of social engineering, if it's based on nature itself, anything ethical is based on the idea that we are naturally dependent on each other. And every action that we do that harms that interdependence is immoral, is considered evil. Those kinds of disconnections are unethical because they harm everything. They resonate everywhere. Two, that ignorance of and resistance to this interconnection are the cause of human suffering in all its forms. Because it's a natural law, because that's the way that we are actually built, and that is what's happening in the internet, where this thing can go anywhere and will be seen by people all over the planet according to their desire and interest. That it's possible to put something into the system that is either medicine, that puts together the whole again, or that is poison, that disconnects things. And its effect will be far more widespread than you or I can generally perceive, in our normal mode of thinking. But it is the essential cause of human suffering. Ignorance of and resistance to this interconnection and interdependence are the cause of human suffering in all its forms. I can continue with all kinds of examples. You know what I'm saying. The way that we hurt ourselves and others is by disconnection, or harming people's access, and not taking into consideration the general needs of our, say, family or our circle. But in this case, we've been shown an example through the internet that our circle involves everybody. And the fact that we are ignorant of it, or we don't want to hear about it, or we would like to limit the amount of responsibility that we actually have, doesn't change anything. It's like a child who's afraid that there's a monster covering their eyes and thinking, well, it's gone away. No. The reason we're given this global media and the reason that we're seeing its complete distortion is so that we will understand its importance, its centrality to human reality, and what it's asking of us. Number 3, that we are charged with transforming our attitude towards this connection to one of wholehearted agreement. We are charged. There is meaning and there is purpose. There's vector to the purpose of life. It's to go from a state of complete detachment or ignorance of this fact and our natural resistance to being this connected and this responsible to each other. That is the whole purpose of life. It's to come to a vast sort of awareness and an artistry that allows us to understand that that's now our society. We live in the biggest of societies, and everything that we think and that we feel affects everybody else. Now that's a scary thought, but what this manifesto goes on to explain is that there is a very simple, singular principle by which we can actually work with something on this big scale. We have to go back to its ethical center. We have to act in agreement with the basic principle behind the interconnectedness. It's really simple. When we make something, when we take something, when we give something, when we conceive of something, the way that we carry out something, all we have to do is hold tight to this singular principle that we are interconnected and interrelated. And this is what our life on this planet is all about. I'll read that again. We are charged with transforming. That's the purpose of our life. To charge and transform our attitude and our resistance to this towards connection to one of wholehearted agreement. That's to take it on. To understand that we, in fact, are the agent of this beautiful divine force that runs through everything and is charging everything to work towards good, including my attitude, your attitude, and especially the attitude of people who create media for this medium. 4, that this individual transformation is only possible through the influence of a society and culture that inspires and unites its individuals around this goal. Yeah, so we're right to look at the huge scope of what's being asked of us, what we're charged to do in our life on earth here, and say, I can't do it. That's right. You can't do it. I can't do it. It's not possible to do it individually. It has to be done in conjunction with and as a result of an influence of a culture, an influence of a society and a culture that is aimed at inspiring and uniting us around that purpose. The ideals of this society, let's call it the society of the internet, the interconnection, needs to be one that goes back again to that central animating force. and it has to come to us from all of the places that we look within it. Even though many of the things we're going to see in our entertainment, in our news, in our study, in our viewing the situations of other interesting cultural aspects, different cultures like nodes connected around the world, all of that needs to be there for the purpose of inspiring us towards understanding the context and role that we have, and seeing that everything else out there in the internet, in the interconnectedness of it, is also that beautiful, shining quality of wholeness, that drive towards wholeness. Wholeness is an attitude and a responsibility. It doesn't exist in any of us. It exists in us as a whole. And that's why it's very important for us to build whatever we make out of that element, to inspire and to connect. So it's not just the work of the individual. It's not possible for the individual to love our friend as ourself. It's possible for the society to be a society of the love of others. 5, the goal of this culture, these global media culture, will be aided by nature as it's in exact alignment with the natural tendency of the living system, which develops its unified parts to fulfillment. It's an impossible task if you look at just the strength of you as an individual, or the group around you, as its combined strength. It doesn't depend only on the society itself. What happens is that when a global culture aligns itself with the underlying principle of nature itself, which is this unifying force, it becomes aided by the natural tendency of nature to unify all its parts towards its intended goal for us. So not only do we use the beautiful aid of others working towards this goal, other media creators, other people watching it, their inspiration, their responses to it, nature itself comes in and bends and assists and strengthens, fortifies, and lifts us into a state of realization of its goal. This is the next step for humanity, and the internet is really our opportunity. The media is actually the tool, the medium through which we can make this leap to the next stage of interrelated humanity in the blink of an eye. 6, this relationship between the individual and the collective will be adjusted in this global world by realizing with the following maxims. All right, this is, in other words, this is what a media creator needs to do. 1, in the emerging interconnected reality, media has been revealed to be the only global society. That's true. I don't think there's any question to that. All of the individual cultures and societies, they're all good, they're all useful, they're all different all over the world. But the thing that we have in common is this strange interconnected network that doesn't seem to have a culture at all. But it is the blank slate on which the future culture of love your friend as yourself will be imprinted and will be brought to reality. It's the only thing that connects everybody, other than the air we breathe, other than the fact that we're floating in space and all that. But these are things that none of us have any sensibility of. We all have a sensibility to this, to the internet. 2, by its nature, global media expresses the desire for interconnection as its primary value. Any other value expressed through it will fail to touch and inform at best, and at worst will delay humanity's development and deepen its suffering. I mean, it's so completely self-evident at this point. When we wrote this, It was, we were projecting this. We felt that we understood what these laws were and projected what would happen in either case. What do you think fake news is? Fake news is like pouring poison into the water system where you are. If you're a media creator, or if you're a news person, if you're a writer, if you use the internet as your primary medium, you need to understand that this is not a once and for all gift. If we don't use the internet correctly, we are going to lose it, because it's based on a very fragile principle. And that principle is that it belongs to everybody. And it's for the good of everybody. Nobody can claim it. Nobody can own it. Nobody can determine which values, other than the values that are inherent in its very construction, will dominate. No values other than the values of nature will dominate. And we don't really understand fully where it's taking us. We have to get engaged with what it's teaching us, with what its very existence implies to us. I mean, it's pretty much in our face. We will lose the internet and our access to everybody's heart all at once if we try to put anything else into it other than its own quality. It's here to teach us. We're not here to use it for our ends, because our ends as individuals are always bad. They're always wrong. They're always disconnective. Now, in the heart of every artist is this pursuit and appreciation of beauty. Beauty is the overcoming of doubt and contradiction. It actually is the overcoming of distances and separation, things that seem to be completely disconnected and break our heart at the beginning of the story. The value changes and we see that no, in fact, all of these things were connected, that we never lost our home, our lover, our ideals, our strength, that we were always connected. So an artist understands that we need to bring this quality now, not just to the end of the story, right from the inception of what it is that we want to create. And here's where we can get, as creators, we can get a wonderful grasp on the outcome of what we will produce. The reason why we produce something, the initial thought behind why we are communicating something, is more important than the quality and color, depth, density of anything that we do in the process of expressing that. Because the outcome will always follow the initial intention behind what it is that we want to create. If we're aiming, the reason that we're making the creation is not to prove some kind of abstract point, but to prove the beauty of human life and our place in the law of nature, which is the law of unity. If that's why we're creating, no matter what we go through and no matter what darkness we may express, in the interim between scene one and the last scene, then it will come out advancing everybody and connecting everybody. We certainly don't want to delay humanity's development, and we certainly don't create things in order to deepen humanity's suffering. But if we use this tool incorrectly, that's exactly what we'll do, because we will lose this opportunity of complete interconnection. We will become shattered again in an even worse way. And I can't see how we're going to make it up. Why waste this opportunity? And finally, number 3, therefore, we, and that means you, me, everybody, all of the media creators and the people who enjoy that media, Therefore, we aim to create a new culture expressed through global media and rooted in its primary value, which will provide the necessary consistent inspiration and motivation to expand our perception and our identification of self and self-interest with the whole. So, when a person goes to art school, whether they're studying musical composition or sculpture or dance or drama or the intricacies of literature, we go to learn the laws of creativity. But those are laws of craft. And you'll find that in the deepest part of that, an artist discovers that they're not actually creating their own work. I mean, they are using their craft. But by using the craft aspect of it, by being completely dedicated to it, something else is functioning underneath that. We talk about inspiration. I don't know where that came from. I just used the laws that I learned, and then in the midst of that, the proper thing appeared. I used it, and it touched others. This is the deepest law of creativity. If we use this one in addition to all of the wonderful craft that we've developed over thousands of years, what a beautiful culture and society we will be creating for everybody. What an inspiration we'll be able to spread throughout everybody's heart. And our concern for others will be at the beginning of the entire process. It will be there through our wrangling with the craft, and it will come out in the end as an expression of the love of others who will be able to share that initial inspiration that we had, because they're also part of this hologram. So that's the Living Manifesto, a statement of principles for the emerging destiny of media. And I'll just finish with the mission statement again. We wish to emulate the natural tendency of the living system, which is focused on unifying its parts for the stated purpose of achieving harmonious similarity with it by creating a global society built only on the expressions in that global media.